So, good afternoon, friends, and welcome back to the post lunch WAF masterclass session. So, we change gears now and we come to actioning what we have learned in the first half. So, welcome back,
It's
Nikhil.
2 o'clock.
And Ram, sir, you're there? Can you hear us, sir? Okay, so while Ram, sir, takes his position. Okay, hello, Ram, sir. You'll have to unmute yourself, sir.
That's okay?
Yes, sir, perfect, loud and clear.
Yeah.
Nikhil, you can hear us?
Yes, absolutely. Hello,
Great.
Ram sir. How are you?
I'm fine, Nikhil. Good to see you again.
Yes, sir. Good to see you.
All right, so it's 2 p.m. So we'll just start with an introduction to Ram sir. We've already introduced Nikhil, and he was there for the pre-lunch session.
Mhm.
So I'll just share the screen once again and show you. Okay. Okay. So here's Ram sir. So Ram sir, basically, it's a privilege and an honor to introduce. Of course, he doesn't need an introduction, but we have with us Mr. S. Ram, and he is the managing partner, Medha Advisors. A little introduction to him, and of course, it's a little and a heavy one. 33 years plus of experience, ladies and gentlemen, in law and its application. Application being most important. Former chairperson of the Indian National Bar Association, known as INBA. Former general counsel at Honda Cars, JCB, Escorts, inducted to World Auto Forum Hall of Fame in 2018. So, friends, it's our time, it's our opportunity to e-meet and e-train with Mr. S. Ramaswamy, managing partner, Medha Advisors, and as he is lovingly called and addressed as Ram Sir or Ram San in the Japanese circles. This is about him. And of course, you already know about Mr. Nikhil Goenka. He's right here, Director PwC. 15 years of structuring domestic cross-border M&A transactions, due diligence, planning, implementing mergers, hive-offs, and acquisitions. And of course, an ace of his gig, which you already seen in the pre-lunch session in his presentation. So now we are changing gears and we are coming to applying the application of what we've learned till now. All right. So going back to our case studies, here they are. I hope you were able to take the screenshots before lunch. Here they are for you once again. So we are playing a simulation game here. We have three scenarios, scenario one, scenario two, scenario three, 15 minutes each. We will give to each one of the situations. First situation being that ABC is an Indian company which is engaged in manufacturing of auto parts, all right, in India. And ABC is held by an overseas auto player which wants to exit from this business. Happens all the time. Now, DEF, another Indian company, is interested in the business of ABC. However, it does not want to buy the shares of ABC. So, what can be the possible alternatives available which DEF, the company, can consider? Of course, this would have had different ramifications pre-COVID, and this might have different now. We can discuss both, and of course, we have to be ready for current and future. So this is the first scenario. Going back to our participants, before the experts start talking about this scenario, anyone would like to take a shot at it? Possibly try to explain what can be the possible alternatives which DEF, the company, can consider. Okay, we have several hands going up. All right. So let's give an opportunity to Anushka Mishra. All right. All right. So Anushka Mishra, please feel free to share.
Yeah, so I was saying that why can't the company go for a acqui-hiring or just acquire the company by taking up the management if that is also a possibility that they can go forward with. So that's my idea of doing it. I can't hear you, sir.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's also take Mr. Arun Gupta and also Mr. Shubham Khanna in the conversation. Yes, Mr. Khanna, please feel free to speak.
Good afternoon to one and all.
Yeah, good
So
afternoon.
the basic requirement for an acquisition is the buying of shares. Now, if we look at Section 2, Clause 27 of the Companies Act,
Mhm.
it gives us two more alternatives, to which the best I found was an SPF, which is a special vehicle. By a special vehicle, DEF will fund ABC, and hence ABC will work on the directions provided by DEF. Therefore, ABC can have separate shares of its own in the market, but the direction on how a company should function will be given by DEF, so that it is clear that there is no acquisition as say in the market, but the majority of the fundings of a company is done by another company, and it is clear that the share is separate, but there is an on hold of a majority hold on a company by some other company mere by funding. If you look at the Section 2 Clause 27, there has been multiple instances throughout beyond 2013 after the Companies Amendment Act, because this entire area was drawn during this 2013 amendment. It was seen that most of the companies could not purchase the shares of some other company because of various reasons. The one being the company which was getting acquired was not working so well in the market. Therefore, funding the company to work as per the directions by the board of directors of the majority company can be one option where both the companies can work and the shares are not to be distributed from one company to the other. So that was my viewpoint, sir.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We move to Mr. Gupta, and after that, the our experts can take on all the submissions. So, Mr. Gupta, please feel free to share your thoughts.
Yes, sir. Mm, in my view, if ABC wants to sell and doesn't want to work, and if the product and DEF is not keen on taking the name of the company, if there is no goodwill attached, or they can look for if they have common buyers, then they can offer ABC to buy all their assets as a one go. They can buy their assets and pay them the money. Then ABC will have to manage to delist themselves. That they have to do, because DEF may not be wanting to buy the assets, liabilities, or other things which are existing in the balance sheet of the ABC, and they get clean assets and clean machinery and clean know-how. That can be a possibility.
Okay, fair enough. So we have heard all our participants. Now it's time for the experts to share their thoughts on the submissions made by Ms. Mishra, Mr. Khanna, and Mr. Gupta. Ram sir, can we begin with you, sir?
I think let Nikhil begin because he's into this day in, day out. Maybe I'll add on.
Okay, so Nikhil
Sure,
bhai,
sure, Rama.
companies
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Very interesting, very interesting points coming up, and I must appreciate all the different dimensions which has been added by a very simple question, which I would have probably seen as something which has already been covered in my presentation. But yeah, I mean, all the 3 points happen to be giving some sort of an ownership or a control structure to DEF when it is looking at the acquisition of this business as such. So clearly, so let's first of all understand as to why somebody may not be really interested to acquire shares. I mean, one obviously understands that it's a very simplistic transaction. You do purchase the shares, and accordingly you get the ownership in the shares of the company, and accordingly you get the entire control on the business. But the fact that there could be some historical or legacy issues, it could be on account of litigation, or could be on account of some legal aspects, because of which the acquirer may want to have a very clean structure in place and would only want to be targeting its focus on the business rather than the historical issues. And Arunji rightly mentioned that one way to clearly structure is to do this transaction not by a share deal, but by way of a business acquisition. And by business acquisition, one could really understand that it would be the entire business, the assets, the liabilities which are pertaining to the undertaking, and all of that can be acquired by a separate SPV or a new SPV which DEF can form for the purpose of holding this entire business. One very interesting point which came, and that was put by Shubham. I think what he was trying to mention is that instead of acquiring the shares, they can sort of have a control over the company. And if I may add a little technical word to this, this is basically by way of a shareholders agreement. When you are not really looking at acquisition of the shares, but what you're looking is to have a controlling right, and this is typically known as affirmative voting rights, wherein the buyer is given a control in the company, wherein he would be asked to compulsorily vote on all the major and important decisions, business decisions of the company. So what happens that DEF effectively gets the ownership, or rather the control, simply because it has to vote, and only after it votes, then only the resolution will be passed for all the business related decisions, or management decisions. So it gets a management right, or a management seat, or a board seat to effectively run the company in its own way without even getting the shares. But what needs to be really looked at is that at the end of it, the entire equity ownership lies with the ABF promoters. So effectively, you also need to see as to how you would be able to benefit or take the benefit of the profits which will be generated once you have the ownership, once you have the control on the company. So that aspect becomes really, really important. One very interesting point came out was relating to the hiring of the management. So point well taken. My limited submission is that while you obviously get the control on the management, and you know that you have hired and they will be on your roles, the entire management team, but the fact that the business still gets housed in the existing entity, the idea here is to acquire the business and the real assets of the company, and not just the management team. So this is also possible, and we have seen transactions, lot of transactions where one only looks at hiring the key managerial personnel, so as to get the entire brain and head of the overall business. Over to you, Rama sir.
Ram sir, please unmute yourself, sir. Ram sir, you need to unmute. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, my kudos to all the participants for bringing out-of-box solutions. So whether it is any transaction for that matter, an out-of-box solution and proactive thinking is what makes you stay ahead on the learning curve as well as on the market. Having said that, and adding on to each participant's point of view, I would like to add 3-4 main things. The fundamental question that you need to ask yourself is that am I making the right buy? Am I making the right investment? Is it going to help me? Because ultimately at the end of the day, it's not charity. It is for profit. So every company, every acquirer will have a different time scale, different time span, different horizon in terms of, how he is going to either make profit or exit out after booking his profit. So these are fundamental questions that one needs to ask beforehand, before even venturing into any deal. So when you look at all these characteristics, and then you come out with the various solutions as has been bought out, and there could be many more. So since we are not dissecting each of those cases right now, but on a broader 30,000 feet, we are discussing this. These are fundamental hygiene issues that we must take into. And there should be no emotion on this. It should be all practically being done. Taking a simple example, is there a fitment between purchasing directly or indirectly this company? Is there a fitment? Supposing the fitment itself is not there, the meeting of minds is not there, then I think it is catastrophic right in the beginning to even be thinking about, going in for those companies' shares, or for that matter, thinking about a profit. So lot of these factors need to be taken into account. Somebody said that, we may look for hiring of those people. What is the guarantee that that people will actually fit into your culture? I have seen in my long tenure about, when I used to go about for the M&A, the first thing I used to look at from an angle really was the people management. Because when you're getting or you're acquiring somebody or a company, then the ethos of that company have to merge with yours. And you have seen many instances recently, the dogfight between L&T and Mindtree. Here are completely different polar companies whose ideology itself is not going to match. Of course, it's a different thing that finally the Mindtree people were out. So this is something very fundamental. So listeners, and Nikhil, I think you will agree that this is a soft side which cannot be completely overruled. And of course, other than that, there are many other factors, which is a taxation part, which is intellectual property angle, which is of course the assets part, the due diligence which goes into it. What are the hidden skeletons available?
Completely, sir. I think you are absolutely right. I
Yeah.
mean, these are fundamental questions which any transaction would require. What
Yeah.
exactly are you buying in? What is in it for you? Is the first question which the buyer needs to answer
True.
before it
Absolutely.
even
You
looks
should
at the
not
transaction.
thereafter have a, load on your back, which becomes extremely difficult to unload.
True. And with that spirit, if we can go to the next case study, so that we can help the participants understand these software issues much better. If I may be allowed to please share the screen once again.
Yeah.
And the second simulation scenario here is PQR, a multinational car company, wants to enter the Indian market. A lot of car companies enter Indian market and is looking for a JV partner in India for local support and facilities. Now, the promoter of XYZ, an Indian based car manufacturer, is interested in forming a JV with PQR. What are the considerations to be kept in mind by both the parties for setting up the JV? All right, so PQR is a company it's a multinational car company outside India, wants to enter Indian market, have a JV in India for local support and facility. There's a company called XYZ. So the promoter of XYZ, already an Indian-based car manufacturer, is interested in forming a JV with PQR. What are the important points for consideration when they set up a JV? All right, stopping sharing right now. Okay. Any initial submissions by our participants before the experts begin? Okay, we have a couple of hands going up. Hey, it's the same old hands. No one different than new, huh?
So these are the budding GCs coming in and the lawyers.
The budding. All right, so we begin with Mr. Arun Gupta and then followed by Mr. Khanna. Yes, Arunji, please begin.
Sir, this has already now been answered by Rama sir. Now, when he says that acquiring, when they both are forming the joint venture, both have to look at the ethos of the company or ethos of the people with whom each other is meeting, and they have to look at each other and both have to answer yes for each other, like are they making the right investment, and is it going to help both the companies as a win-win situation if they enter into a joint venture and enter into a new territory, whether it is going to increase their geographical reach and their sale and fitment for both the companies. If both are existing car companies, if they both can bring something new models or new something from this Indian land and they can export from here, then these two
Fair
should
enough.
be.
Fair enough, Mr. Gupta. Fair enough. Mr. Khanna, you want to add something?
Just a small point to add on to Mr. Gupta. The only thing that they might focus on is for intermediate jurisdiction for DTAA, which is Double Taxation Avoidance Agreement. This is one of the main factors that most of the companies miss out when foreign companies come into a joint venture in India. So that's all I wanted to point out, that the more intermediate jurisdiction is to put focus on DTAA first. Thank you, sir.
So we appreciate points for both the gentlemen. So Nikhil and Ram sir, please feel free to comment on this situation, this simulation.
Sure, Anuj. How I see joint ventures. I think it's a marriage. So you take all the preparatory steps to go for a marriage alliance, and you'll be eating together, you'll be sleeping together, having a good time, and also be mindful that what synergies and benefits and how many children you will ultimately have, and what profits losses you will ultimately end up sharing. So clearly it's a question which is which has a lot of dimensions, and for both the parties actually. Very interesting point made by Arun sir, and what he mentioned, that there could be a geographical fitment when a new car manufacturer is looking to enter into India, and maybe they do not have any experience, so they would rather be banking on the local JV partner to look at what he can bring on the table and basically deploy or exploit those advantages. What also needs to be and taking the point of Shubham, what he mentioned about the double tax avoidance agreement, I think clearly a good point, because it is a start of a strategy or entry strategy into the market, and maybe jurisdictions like Singapore, Mauritius, Netherlands, these countries do offer some sort of a tax advantage for investments into India. So clearly a point, very important point from purely from an income tax standpoint. Uh, but one more important aspect, and while obviously the contours of JV would be important. What I have also seen is that it's ultimately a contract, and what Ramas sir was mentioning, that you have to, ultimately you are there for profits, you are ultimately there for business. So you need to know that what if the alliance doesn't work, and just like we have a prenuptial agreements in case of a marriages, I mean, equally it's important that you also strategize an exit. You need to know, if at all a party has to make an exit, what all rights and obligations will rise on such exit. What responsibilities you want to put, what how the funding will happen, how the future funding will happen. Will the JV be allowed to raise funds from a third party? uh, you know there would be no dilution rights, so that no third party could be brought in. What if there is a change in the shareholding of the foreign parent? So I've seen the Indian JVs requiring some sort of a approval from the Indian JV partner, if let's say there is a foreign partner whose ultimate shareholding has got changed. So assuming that, let's say, if I may say by way of a practical example, that Federal Mogul, when it was taken over by Tenneco, and I'm taking an automotive space example itself. So when Tenneco acquired Federal Mogul, I'm sure that whatever JVs Federal Mogul would have in India, or let's say in any other country, there could have been scenarios where the JV partners NOC to continue in that relationship would be required. And because essentially the marriage happened with some partner, and that ultimately changed hands, so that ways things like these will be very, very critical. Rama sir.
Yeah. Again, I like to start off by going down memory lane. And the memory lane that I'm talking about is a real classic example of the JV between Honda and CL, and of which I was fortunate enough to be part right from the inception of the company. So here is a classic case of a marriage which was possibly or has been there till eternity. And thereafter, even the graceful exit. And if we look at the contours of this particular agreement, you will find all the factors which are there, which ideally should be there in a proper marriage for it to last. The respect of both the parties for each other, irrespective of coming from different space. As you know, CL was not a automobile company, but CL agreed to provide all the bandwidth and help in terms of setting up the infrastructure for Honda in India, and how they went about. And since I've been witness to all that for almost 11 years that I was the GC there, I can say with a lot of conviction that it's a case which really needs to be a Harvard study of how one can go about in structuring a great JV and going about doing that business, wherein both the partners, in spite of having unequal shareholding, lopsided, it started off as 60-40, went even up to 99-1, if I'm not mistaken, and finally 100% acquired. But the gracefulness with which each of the parties managed, and a clear delineation of duties between them. So Anuj, you will appreciate this, with audience out here, how beautifully it was structured, in the sense that production, finance, manufacturing, marketing fundamentals were with Honda, but the most essential part, which was managing of the labor, the legal, the general administration, and all these were with CL. And that's how Goela-san and his team, and I was fortunate to be part of that, how we went about in setting it up. So this is something which I will urge the youngsters to go about. And for that matter, most of the successful JVs, if you see, they've all had a good span of maybe 20-25 years, and they have pettered out, maybe rightfully so, because after a particular period of time everybody wants to venture out. But the ultimate, I would say, the proof of the pudding lies in the eating, is that one must have such a good structured JV that it should also allow a smooth exit out without any acrimony. As they say, you must build bridges and not burn bridges. So that's where I'll end it.
True. Could not agree more with you, Ram sir, on that. In fact, I had the honor of working at Honda Cars India, Honda Steel Cars as it was back then, when Ram sir was the general counsel, he was the legal head, and I was working in the marketing department, marketing and sales. So yes, while Ram sir was explaining the segregation, bifurcation, it was for me too, it was a walk down the memory lane. I could actually visualize the offices and how every department would work, in conjunction.
Seamlessly, we used to work in an open environment.
Absolutely. In fact, the other example which comes to my mind, a recent one, is you all would have heard of the Group PSA and FCA, the Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, merging to make the fourth largest car maker in the world. And of course, right now they are under clouds of the EU watchdog. All that is happening right now. But very few people might have read in the news that there's this Chinese company called Dongfeng. Dongfeng and Group PSA have had a JV for donkey years. In fact, Dongfeng also used to own 12% in Group PSA. So after the merger, the Group PSA executives met Dongfeng executives, and complete meeting of people, meeting of minds happened, and they convinced that, hey, we have been partners for so long, we would like to continue our JV. So they proposed, and of course they would have negotiated. So in the proposed combined entity of Group PSA, FCA, Dongfeng shall now have 4.5% stake in the combined entity. So Dongfeng is supposed to sell off their shares, millions of them, and then have a 4.5% stake. So that is also what trust can do. They have continued to be the JV partner and a stakeholder in the combined entity. Okay. Yes, sir.
Anuj, one last point I like to make. Even enemies can turn into friends, when situations arise. When I say enemies, not literally, but ideological differences and even competing partners. And this COVID scenario and post-COVID, believe me, is going to create a situation where you will find unlikeliest of the players maybe collaborating together just for the sheer purpose of navigating and being overboard. They'll have to stay afloat. Otherwise, everybody will fall by the wayside. So this is one thing which I'm looking at, is that maybe a lot of car companies are going to get together into a huddle, and they may create a kind of an entity just to stay afloat.
Let's hope for the best. So now this gets us, friends, to the last scenario of the simulation. So I'll quickly read it out for your convenience.
It's 2:30.
So here it is. XYZ is an Indian company looking for expanding its business outside India in an inorganic way. So it has identified a target in Germany called PQR. However, they do not have any prior experience in an overseas acquisition. So what are the alternatives available to XYZ for acquisition of business of PQR? So participants, you have to wear a hat now of a consultant. Suppose you have been hired by XYZ and you have to give them consultancy. What would you propose and submit to them?
In fact, Anuj, I like to add a question here to the participants to make it more interesting.
Yes, sir.
Let the participant assume that they are a cross-functional team, which is of an MD, a CEO, MD CEO, a CFO, and of course a general counsel, which is ideally and maybe a marketing head, definitely a marketing head. So let them apply their minds that as a team, how will they go about in identifying not only this consultant, but also in looking at how they'll identify which will be the right fitment for them in Germany, and that they come out trump.
So we again have Mr. Gupta, who has raised his hand. So I'll just allow him to speak. So anyone else? Okay, okay. Again, Mr. Khanna is here. You can speak after Mr. Gupta. Yes, Mr. Gupta. Yeah.
Sir, thank you for inviting me to reply. For this, the Indian company must look for a experienced consultant who has presence both in India and Germany, maybe, and then must have knowledge of laws of both the countries and also taxation issues of both the countries. So that person may help in aligning the strategy for acquisition, how they should acquire by share or by like that, how they can avoid the taxation, and this planning has to be done. Like, then they can decide. I understand from the question that they have already technically evaluated that this company is a good fitment, and if they buy it, this will add value to even their Indian operations also. That they have already done. So legal issues has to be, and maybe if it is a big deal, then they may go through some chamber of commerce and like that, involve some politician maybe.
So fair enough. So Mr. Khanna, what would you like to suggest to the Indian company?
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Sir, if I may go back to the year 2008, and if you could give me 2 minutes of time.
2 minutes, that's pretty long, huh? Okay.
Sir, a Bangalore-based contract firm called Chemwell Private Limited bought Pfizer's production plant in Germany in the year 2008. Now, sir, coming back to 2005, where Indian Turbine Company had bought Suzlon Engages Limited for $565 million. So this was still 2008. 2009, the Lisbon Treaty got converted into the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union. The main part of the European Union is Article 101, which talks about merger. As we all know, the European Union is very a state aid. It focuses on the countries within its jurisdiction and not outside. And the entire concept of the antitrust laws that we have in our country as competition laws is mostly taken from US and not from the European Union. Therefore, a merger in the European Union is controlled and also processed by the European Union government itself. Keeping in concern the German government, when you have to acquire or invest in Germany, you have to keep notice to three things: that the firm should have a sufficient capital to fund the business, and second is called a BCE. So a BCE is Banque Chauffeur des Enterprises. This is a basic term where you have to get the permit from the German government for taxation purposes, for planting an industry, for any kind of partnership, even if you want to have a partnership business in Germany. Therefore, my only advice to the firms, if I'm good enough to be a consultant, will be to first go through the merger and acquisition clauses of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union, how that treaty works in Germany, and in that Germany, what other kind of resources and permits do you need for setting up that company? If that is not satisfied, the European Union won't allow Indian firms to work as they want to in European Union. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so that's pretty much on the procedural part. I must say, Mr. Khanna, you have good insight on that. So, okay, so Mr. Neeraj Bandhu, what would you like to add over here?
Yeah, I would like to answer actually more on what Mr. Rama had said, that, you know, how would you identify the right company abroad? And I just wanted to share like a very simple framework that we use in our company. It's called the MMC framework. So we look at three things called management, margin, and core. So the first is management, as Mr. Rama had also explained, that we need to see whether the, you know, the thought process of the two teams which are going to get integrated after acquisition, you know, whether they are at the right, into the same plane. That is first. Then margin. What is the expectation of margin? Whether you are looking at a 30% EBITDA or you're looking at a 10% EBITDA, right? What kind of margin are you expecting? And the third is core. Like, does the new acquisition fit into the core product strategy or the core market strategy that the parent company is following? So this is a framework that we follow for M&A.
Okay, fair enough. So the question over here that we have at hand is a very technical, specific question that the Indian company going to Germany and, you know, acquiring, expanding in an inorganic way. All right, so Nikhil, let's begin with you on based on the submissions done by the gentleman here.
I think my, hearing all of them, my feels like my answers would be on tax or laws are, fairly shortened with the way and the elaboration made by Shubham for that matter. But very, very good answers actually. And, what I may add, it's actually, more on the cultural aspect, which we have practically seen in some of the largest acquisitions that have happened in the past, where the Indian promoters or Indian multinationals have gone outside and acquired companies. So we may talk about examples of Tata Motors taking over JLR. We can even talk about Polo Tires taking over Coopers. Motherson Sumi doing so many acquisitions at various points in time. What is very clear is the level of flexibility and the level of the level to which you allow your cultural shift to be adapted when you make an acquisition. Because essentially the labor laws, the antitrust laws, all the regulations around the operation of the business houses in Germany are very stringent. And from an Indian mindset, one may really not be prepared to that extent, when they look at an acquisition. So while synergies and what is the margin levels and management, the capabilities, the profitability, the flexibility with which the Indian promoters can look to fund, if at all it's a stressed asset. All these aspects are very important. But just to add to all that, I think cultural aspect and the aspect on the overseas regulation are two more important points which I would like to add.
Okay, Nikhil, your audio is not that clear. Probably your mic is touching the shirt, or probably it's a connection issue or both.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So what I was only mentioning, only two aspects, Anuj, if I may summarize.
Sure.
One on the cultural aspect, and the second one on ensuring that they should be ready for regulations. I mean the regulations and laws of the target country.
Great. In fact, so Ram sir, what would you say on this?
I'll just like to first of all compliment all the participants for their out-of-box thinking once again. And Neeraj, I'm really flattered by couple of things that you say, and I can see a mirror image of myself in my younger days with what you have said. So I'll do a coinage here for the benefit of all of you, which I'll call the triple M. So the triple M goes like man, management, and materials. These are three fundamental things, irrespective of any merger, acquisition, or anything. It can be involved in your daily life also. It's the people to people who ultimately will be, managing or speaking to each other or taking the companies forward. Then comes, the management of it. To manage people is an art. That's why, you have great leaders and not so great leaders. And third, and of course, is the materials. So when I say the materials, it's what is the product going to be? Is there going to be a fitment amongst the inorganic field in which we are going to operate in? Having said that, little bit with certainty, I can say that Germany also, in a way, symbolizes most of the things of what we do here in India. And they have a very clear-cut idea. Their precision in terms of engineering needs no second guesses, quite forthright in their approach of working. And the best part is that most of the automobile companies which have been fairly doing well in India in terms of the Germans speaks that there is a definite fitment between the Indian ethos and the German way of working. So that could be a point number one, which would be a positive point. But again, any transaction will need to go through the complete four square, and that's where you'll have to dovetail each and every aspect, howsoever minuscule it may be, and then you'll have to take it forward. Which will include taxation, which will include the people, the management, the funding, the horizon that you are looking at. A simple thing, it could be even that how the board is going to be represented. There could be ego issues there also. So look at it from all that without a knee-jerk reaction. And the right way would be to engage a consultant who would at least give you a fair amount of idea, and then the management should huddle together and take a broader and optimistic call on it.
True, fair enough. And in fact, I would like to add over here, that when a local company doing business in their own at their own home turf, it's far easier than a foreign company getting into foreign land. So if an Indian company is doing business in India, it's much easier. You know the people around, you know the law, politicians, you can get your way through. But if you're entering in the country, in a developed country in the West, you have to be very particular about the local laws, the local customs, the people, the cultural fit. Like what Nikhil mentioned about Apollo and Cooper, what happened? There was a big, huge backlash. That deal just went off.
Absolutely.
Purely because of the cultural mismatch. They could have together become the seventh largest tire company in the world. They were probably vested interest, or they fueled the fire, or whatever. Eventually, the root cause might have been anything, but the immediate cause was that the people just said, "Hey, it's not going to happen." So when the people say it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. And yes, you cannot be caught on the wrong side of the law in any country, especially in a foreign land. So you have to be very particular about all the compliances they have to be in place. Look at Tesla. Tesla entered Germany to have a plant, and the locals shut down, got the plant activity shut down. The work was shut down for more than a week. And Tesla has entered Germany on the invitation of the top guys in Germany, because they want to transform into an electric vehicle country. So even Tesla had to pull strings up, to get the work back on, So yeah.
Yeah, and they have robust labor laws. They have robust labor laws. The
Absolutely.
trade unions are very strong. So I mean, all these aspects are very, very relevant. Just one more point which I would like to add, and while we talked about the target countries' laws and regulations, India also has a regulation which governs the overseas investment from India. So there are limitations as to how much you can invest. And besides that, the other point which I would like to highlight is the forex, the exchange control risk. So basically, the movement of currency. And while somebody would be expecting, okay, I invest, let's say, 100 million euros today, and maybe I should be getting 110, 120 million euros maybe after 2 years down the line. But one also needs to be understanding that rupee, if depreciates, may be favorable to you, but if rupee appreciates, then probably this transaction may not really be as profitable as you may have expected. So these two aspects also which I was wanting to highlight.
Fair enough. Fair
when
enough.
we are looking at any.
Absolutely. And I think we are just in time to wrap up this session. And we've covered all the 3 case studies, all the 3 simulations in a beautiful way. And the best part, what I personally found was we were not just going like a Lakir ka Fakir, only in a procedural way or by the legal code. We were also adding and considering the cultural issues, the humane resources issues, and the larger issues of the fit of the organization. So, and that comes with experience. So people like Ram sir, people like Nikhil, so they make all the difference. Yes, Ram sir. Last few seconds before we get into our panel.
Yeah, I'm compelled to, recommend a book here out of my, as is my want. I would recommend everybody to read a book called Cold Steel. Cold Steel is a real life scenario book on the acquisition of Mittals of Arcelor. This is a brilliant book which will actually give you real life examples about people, politics played at the highest level in terms, today's movement, you may even call it racist, but, and the secrecies that went into it in the unlikeliest places as public toilets where they used to discuss. So I would recommend everybody to read this book in case you are looking at becoming experts in M&A.
Absolutely great. So it could not have come from anyone else apart from our prolific book reader, Ram sir. So I've also put the Amazon link of this book.
Wonderful.
Please go through it.
You're quick off the block, Anuj, as
Sir,
usual.
can I ask a question from
Sir,
Rama
we can
sir?
ask it offline, sir. Sir, we're totally out of time, sir. So I'm sorry, we're totally out of time. We have to get into our panel discussion. So you can put in the comments and we can take it up from there. No worries. Don't worry. And Ram sir is right here. You can possibly also include it in the panel discussions for Q&A. Right,
Yeah.
sir? Okay.
And thank you, everybody. Very engaging. And I also learned a lot from you guys.
Great.
Keep up the good show.
Thank you so very much. Yeah,
Thank you everyone, and wonderful interacting with you.
Yes. And Ram sir,
Stay safe and
yes. Yeah. Thanks a ton, Nikhil. Thanks a ton. Thank you so much.
thank you. Thanks, Anuj. Thank you. Thanks, Amos.